begin the current Daf Mesech Kesuvos Daf Ayin Tes. We begin on the bottom of Ayin Ches Beis, three lines up from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara continues the discussion from this opinion of Rabbi Shimon that we left off with. We spoke about in the Mishnah 4 different cases regarding the title of this parak. Isha Shenaflu on Nachasim. She has Nachasim before she got engaged, when she's engaged, before she got married, after she got married, what the halach is going to be. And we mentioned Rabbi Shimon, he has a qualification. He differentiated between if it's Nachasim, are you doing Labal, and not you doing Labal, if he did know about it, didn't know about it, if he's relying on it regarding if the wife could tell it or not. That's the Gemara continues with a story that illustrates this halacha. Today's daf, something that's discussed in today's daf are a way that a wife is able to arrange that a property should be Nachasim she'ein do Labal. She's going to make it that he doesn't know about it. Why? So that they remain fully hers and don't become nichsim elug. Items that a wife inherits while she is married. Regarding old slaves and old trees, meaning if they die, the wife will lose her keren and the husband will lose his payers. What the halacha is regarding selling it off. Nichsim elug, like we said, are properties that remain the wife's. The husband only has plucking rights to use its payers, but that's in contrast to nichsit tzarbasa. So begin the current daf Ayin Ches Beis. 3 lines up and about the Yomit. It says the Gemara the following story, which you can relate back to the halacha of the Mishnah. There was a certain woman, she was a widow, and she was coming to get married. So it's a second marriage. She wanted to avoid her second husband from getting the rights. She got a big a settlement from her, she inherited her first husband, wealthy magnate, and now she's going to be married. She doesn't want that the second husband should get all that money. So what she did was, she wrote it off to her daughter. Now, she notified the witnesses that this gift is not a gift. This is just, like some people do with certain types of taxes, we just want to avoid or evade. And she didn't really want that her daughter should get the rights to it. So if she gets widowed or divorced from her second husband, she wants to make sure that she gets that money. She just doesn't want the second husband to get it. Now, in Tziva, what happened was she got married, but the second marriage didn't last because she got divorced. It says, so she came to Rav Nachman to claim from her daughter to give her back her assets. And the daughter brings out this document over here, showing, what do you mean, Ma? You wrote me off your whole estate. All the millions and millions are mine. So Kari Rav Nachman took the document and he ripped it up. So as Rabban went in front of Ma'ukva, and Amalei said to Ma'ukva, Chazimar, does the master see Nachman Chakla, Nachman the villager, is not proficient in judgment? Ma'ukva was the best, and he was coming to the head of the court. So he just tore up someone's document. So Ma'ukva said to him, okay, Emily, easy, tell me exactly, what was the story? So Amalei said to him, this was the story. Amalei says, Shtar Mavrachas Kamrit? You're saying a document of evasion? Shmuel said that I am someone who rules for halacha. Meaning, I took permission from the Resh Galusa, like the Gemara says in the first paragraph of Daf Yomi Aleph, that it's only effective if we get permission. And permission was only given to someone that's a baki, that's well versed in these halachas. And that he said, I'm a moyara. And if a document of evasion would come to me, meaning that the recipient who received the gift wants to hold on to the estate based on that, not to give it back to the giver, I will tear it up. Now, later on the Gemara is going to ask, if it's not a document, so how does it help to be mavriach to avoid the second husband getting the rights to it? But Amli Rav Nachman said to Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman was the one who tore up the document. So he was asking him, how did you rely on this teaching of Shmuel to tear up the document? Why did Shmuel say I would tear up the document? Is the Leishavik Inish Navshe, because no one would leave their own life penniless, and give it to someone else. So obviously the person did not have a mind to acquire it to that person, only because they were afraid from someone else that they shouldn't hold on to it, meaning the second husband. But that's to someone else. When you give it to a foreign random person, you could say that for sure the person did not have a mind to be makneh to that person. But to our daughter, you could say that she gave it as a bona fide gift because it's our daughter. So how do you know definitively that you were able to tear it up? That Rav Nachman said, if Allah even so, b'mokum brata, in place of her daughter, nafsha difula. Yeah, people care about themselves more than the daughters, and therefore, if she's going to write away all her millions of dollars to her daughter, it's obviously just to avoid her second husband from inheriting it, but definitely it was not to give it to the daughter. But next, the Gemara asks on Shmuel from the following brisa. The brisa says, if someone wants to avoid, chase away her estate from her husband, so what should she do? So the Tanakhama says, what she does is she writes a document of pasim to others. That's Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. What does that mean? The word pas is from the word of pius. It's a word that we use now a lot. Moichel someone, so you're basically enticing, seducing, convincing this person to receive this gift. So you mafias them because the person's like, I don't want this money. So they said, no, it's just I don't want my husband to get these rights to it. So she is mafias someone before she gets married, but not that the recipient is going to be mekabel. That's a shtar pasim. The Chacham, the sages, they say, no, whoever would receive this shtar pasim, mitzachik ba, could laugh all the way to the bank and hold on to that money because you wrote me a document of a gift. Until she writes to the recipient of the gift and a document saying, Mehayoim, from today is given to you, and when I want, meaning, so that's considered chasing it away from her new husband, because if the new husband comes to marry in her property, she says, I want that gift that I gave to that person to be kaim, comes out retroactively, it is kaim, and that person already has it. And if, let's say, the one who's written the document to is coming to hold on to it, she could say, I don't want it. So either way, she could get out of it, and she's going to get the best of both. Says the Gemara, time of the Chasvei sounds like, according to the Chacham, the reason only why she's not going to lose all the money because she wrote these words of Mihayim Lukashi Eretz. But if she didn't write like this, sounds like Kananinu Lekech, that the Lekech would acquire it. So that refutes Shmuel, who said that no, that if you write off a document to the daughter, that she's not going to get it. Sounds like that she could, whoever the recipient could get it. So Amr Zeri says, like Kasha, this is not difficult, because it depends what the case is talking about. When did Shmuel say that the recipient's not going to acquire it is Bekula? Is when she writes away all her estate. Since she didn't leave anything for herself, if she's going to get divorced, obviously, it's like what's called a non-sahadi, we could testify. Obviously, she didn't make up to go ahead and be making to the person. This that we learned in the Brisa, that he could laugh, the recipient of the gift could laugh all the way home, is b'miktsasa. She only wrote part of it. Yeah, that's Gamar Makna, that's going to be a valid kinyan. Then the Gemara asks, on Shmuel, you're telling me that if she writes off all her estate, that the recipient's not going to acquire, but then we have a basic question. If you're telling me that the consumer, the buyer, the recipient, whatever it is, has not acquired it, and to be able to eat Paris and to inherit it if she dies, so then, if she doesn't acquire it, so what about Racha is there? So Nikni Nebal, the husband should acquire it and be able to eat Paris and yet inherit her if she dies, because there's no one acquired anything. Monashach, if it's not Racha, because she wrote of everything and not Gama Maknis, then why isn't the husband going to inherit her? So Mabai, this is why we brought in this whole story. This is where it finally relates back to Allah Mishnah Reb Shimon. Mabai says Asom, because essentially that's made it Kinachasim She'eni Du Labal, like properties that are not known to the husband, Reb Shimon, because he married her not with the intention of those properties, because he thought that it was a bona fide matana to that person. So just like Nechasim that on that you doing, which we said two different opinions, whether it's Metatlin or if it's Medina Siyam, he doesn't know about it. Reb Shimon says that she could sell it because he didn't marry her based on that. So this also, you're right, it's not really matana, this mavrachas. The recipient doesn't get anything when you do kula. So how does it help? Because it's like Nechasim Sheni do in Labal, according to Reb Shimon, that's why it's going to work, it's going to be effective for that woman. Continuing, I'll look at the next Mishnah, continuing on this theme of our Nichse Melug, and regarding the peiros of Nichse Melug, that the husband has the rights to pluck and to eat the peiros of her Nichse Melug properties. Says Mishnah, what happens if Naflullah, let's say she inherits when she's married, Kesafa, monies. So the halach is Yilakach ben Karka. So what you do is like this. You buy for her property with that monies, and he eats the produce. and the Karen, the principle of the lug, is maintained for her. Because the Chachamim will only misakin for him because he has to redeem her from captivity. He doesn't get the properties themselves, only gets the paytas. Now the reason why we buy karka is if he would use the money, he might lose the money. We want her to hold on to the principal. So we take the money, we buy property, she'll always have the principal, which is really hard, and he'll have payers from that nechsim lug. What happens if, let's say, payers hatlush from that karka? Let's say she inherits payers that are detached from the ground. So here also, it's the same thing. The principal is the payee. So you look at the karka, you buy property with that, and then from that karka, which now is her principal, he eats payers from that. What's with payers from chabar bakarka? What's with the payers that are attached to the ground? How do we qualify that? Is that considered the payee, or is that considered as the principal? Samar Meir says, okay, we evaluate the property, how valuable it is with payers. How valuable it is without payers, because he holds, your mayor, that what grows in the husband's possession, that's considered payers. What didn't grow in the husband's possession, that's principal. So therefore, umaiser, what the value of the property is more now because of this produce. So he has to give her that monetary value. And you look at ben karka, that monetary value you buy property with, but person needs to pay yourself that because although that's payers, that payers is not payri, it's principal. It came into the marriage like that. They disagree, they say no. The payers that are attached to the ground, even though it didn't grow in the husband's possession, ultimately it's payers of a karka. Because the karka, the principal, is still going to last. So actually, they hold shaloi. He gets it. But karka, but that which is detached from the ground, that shaloi, like that we said, that she gets. And again, therefore that's principle. And the yilachim in karka, and again, that you have to use to buy property. Voichel pays needs to pay for that. Now, Reb Shimon Omer, he says, Malkum sheyafa kreicha bichnisasa. He says, where the husband has a stronger hand when he gets married to her, he has the weaker hand when she leaves him, if he's coming to divorce her. On the other hand, where he has the weaker hand when she's coming into his domain, that's where he has the strong hand when she's leaving. So the Mishnah says, Ketzad, what does that mean? So the Mishnah explains. When she comes into his, in other words, if at the time of its nafila, there's payers that she's getting married, are payers of mechabarim lekarka, so shaloi, that's his. That's like the Rabbanan, who says even though it didn't grow in this property, which he was going to ask, so that's the same thing as a Tanakama. What he's saying differently. Now, B'tziyas on the other hand, we say it's going to be weaker if he's divorcing his wife and there's properties that you have payers that are attached. That's going to be shalah. Why? Because she takes back the property as it is with the payers on it. Whereas vatlushin in karka, when it's detached from the ground, bichnisasa, when she comes into the marriage like that, shalah, it's hers. And like we say, because that's the principle. And you purchase karka with it, and he eats the payers. Ubitzi asa, when she's leaving, is shalah, it's his. Because whatever he went and he detached when it was still by him, he married it because it was payers of nechsimiluk. So Reb Shimon points out that where it's stronger when he gets married, it's weaker when he's leaving. When it's weaker when he's getting married, it's stronger when he's leaving. Again, that's the differentiation between payers of mechubar l'karka or payers hatlush l'karka. Now, the Gemara goes through an order of preference where, if let's say the woman inherited money, like we said, so we said in the opening case of the Mishnah that you have to buy property. Now, let's say they're coming to buy property. So the Gemara says that Pshit, it's obvious. If let's say you have Aru Ubati, let's say there's a husband and a wife. One of them is saying, I want to buy property that we can plant. The other one says, no, I want to buy homes, houses, or the opposite. Whichever one says one way, one says the other way. Says the Gemara, that's obvious that that we're going to buy land because you have more profit and it doesn't deteriorate. So either one of them could hold back, that the husband could say, no, I want something that has more payers, and that have more payers from a piece of land. So if he wants to buy a house with the monies, she could say, no, I don't want something that gets deteriorated and will diminish, and the principal is going to be diminished. I want land, which always remains land. So let's say bati b'dikli. Let's say it's between houses and palm trees. So bati, houses win, because you get more profit from houses than palm trees, which dry out. Let's say it's between dikli, between palm trees and vilane and other trees. So dikli, palm trees win. Ilani v'gufni, it's between other trees and grapevines. Ilani, other trees win. So that's regarding the order of preference. Now, the Gemara continues. Let's say if she inherits an iba, going back to the halacha of what's principal and what's peri, and the fact that she has to retain her principal when the marriage is over, as in the case of nichse melug. So iba, if she inherits a forest, which is used to chop down trees, or zeratza, which are sorb apple trees, which they weren't significant payers, so they would be chopped down for their wood. Or pita de chavi, or let's say it's a pit of fish, like a fish pond. So Amrullah, some want to say that if this falls for her for Yerusha, that the chopping of the wood and the catching the fish in the pond, that is considered payir. That's the payers. And as we said from the Chachamim, even if the payers came like that, you could use the payers, and the karka is the principal. Now, Ba'amullah, some say no, actually all of that is karna, all of that is principal. Why? Because the wood and the fish are going to be depleted. So actually what you have to do is you have to sell it all immediately, buy other property, and then you eat payers of those things. Which the Gemara says, according to that opinion, the rule of it is as follows. Is gizay machlef, if the trunk regenerates, so then it's payed. Then the wood is going to be payed, because you could chop the wood and then it's going to come back. And gizay machlef, the trunk does not regenerate, like these trees of the uzradin, of the sorb apple trees, the trunk does not regenerate, so kind of that's considered principal, and you can't just chop off the wood and use it as the peri. No, you have to sell that all, buy something else, and then use the payers of that. Now the Gemara continues on this discussion. If someone steals, as we continue to the base, vlad behemas miluk. Someone steals the offspring of the woman's nichse miluk, which is that she had inherited this animal, and then it gave birth and offspring, and someone steals it. So Allah is that we know when someone steals something, you have to pay a penalty of double the amount. Now says the Brisa, you give it leisha. You give it to the woman, not to the husband. Now the assumption of the Gemara is that he holds that the offspring is not paid. The offspring is the principal. And therefore you have to buy land with that, because we're concerned that maybe the mother, which is the Nismalug, is going to die, and then the principal is going to be depleted. So the offspring is part of the Keren, and that's why if the animal is stolen, the offspring, we consider it as the woman's, as the Keren, not as the husband's, as paid. It says, come on, who is this like? Like Rabban, like Chananya, it's not like any one of the Tanaim. The time like we learned in the Brisa. We have a machlekes, Vlad behemas miluk. The offspring of a milug animal, says the Tanakama, that goes labal, that goes to the husband. So that's automatically not like what we just said. Now, Vlad shivchas milug, they differentiate. The offspring of a shivcha milug is leisha. That goes to the woman, which you must explain what would be the reason for that discrepancy between a shivcha and a behemoth. Now, Chananya ben Achi Yeshi Amar, the nephew of Yeshi, he says, he says no, they made the offspring of a shivcha milug the same thing as kablat behemoth milug. They both go to the husband. Be that as it may, both opinions say that by behemoth, if she has her nichse milug, which are her property, the husband just gets to use the payers, so he gets to ride the animal, he gets to pet the animal, whatever he wants to do. But the keren is hers. So you tell me the offspring, you told me that the kefil goes to the woman. But both opinions in this brisa say that the offspring goes to the husband. So why would the kefil go to the woman if it's considered payers? Says the Gemara, no, you could say that actually the halacha is like everyone. Because the actual offspring itself, you're right. The Rabban instituted that the husband gets it. So he actually gets the offspring. He could shech that and make himself a nice meal, a veal, from the offspring. But what's interesting is that the offspring of the offspring, meaning kefil that's a derivative of the offspring, loitakin rabbanan. Rabbanan did not institute that for the husband. So what's interestingly is he can eat the animal for his supper, but if it gets stolen and then it's kefil, he doesn't get it because that's considered paid in the payment of the original mother.
Oh, but the Karen they should get it.
What?
But the Karen we should get it.
No, Karen is a hard.
No, not the Karen, meaning the Karen of what was stolen. That's parent.
Oh, right. No one said that. Right. They're right. No one said that. Right. Maybe that would be. Exactly. Right. We're just talking about the kefil. The kefil, however, would go to the woman. Now says the Gemara, Bishlam lechananya. I mean, you have to know exactly, did we give him payri or what? This is tashlum for the payri, but it's not the same thing as kefil. So the Gemara says Bishlam lechananya. We understand according to Chananya that he says that the offspring always goes to the husband. He doesn't differentiate between the shifcha or behemoth. So that's where we're not concerned for the death of the mother. So the principle will remain over there. And we're saying the payri, the offspring, will go to the husband. According to Rabbanan, I don't understand. If they're concerned for death of the mother, then even the offspring of an animal shouldn't go to the husband. If they're not concerned for death, then even the offspring of a shifcha should also go to the husband. What's the discrepancy between the shifcha and a behema regarding the offspring? Says the truth is that the Rabbanan are concerned for death of the mother. That's why by a shifcha we say the offspring goes to her, because that's also considered part of the principle, because we don't want her principle to be depleted. So what's the understand b'shana behema? Why is the animal different? Because the ikka ayra, even if the mother's going to die, the principle is not totally depleted because you still have the hide of the animal. You don't have them by a human being, by a shifcha, and therefore that's why we say the offspring is going to be considered payri only by an animal, not by a shifcha. And that the offspring always goes to the husband, whether it be by a shifcha or behema. He says, although we just quoted now that Shmuel says that the offspring always goes to the husband. Hanan, however, agrees in the following halacha. If she gets divorced and the husband, you're right, he got the rights to the offspring, which they're like detached payers, but still he agrees that nesenes, the woman could give the husband money, damim, and then she could take the offspring of her maidservant for a different reason. What's called mishvach beisaviyah, because of the praise of her father's household, which this is always this slave family has always been in their family. And although the offspring, yes, really is owned by the husband, but she can pay it back to get back that it stays this heirloom of in her father's family. I'm gonna now continue on this. What's considered payri? What's considered the Karen is being depleted? So I'm gonna Nachman. He says a woman gets married, and she has a goat that's nechsi meluk. Now she brings in the goat into the marriage, which means the husband could eat the milk because it's the payri. Or a sheep for the shearing of the wool, which Rashi just points out that's the primary of a sheep. That's what we're saying, but the same thing would be that he would also be able to take the milk and the offspring. Over time, she brings a chicken, a hen, in for its eggs, or palm tree, or any tree for its fruits. So okay, the husband could eat the pears, that's what Karen, until the whole principle gets depleted. Why? So Rashi explains. Because by each one of these items, even if the whole thing is done, you still have some remnant. By an animal you have the hide, even if it dies. By a chicken you have its feathers. By a tree, when it dries up, you have its wood. So all the things that we're mentioning are payers that are constantly renewing. And that's the normal way of having pleasure. So he could eat it and deplete it until you sapped all the energy of whatever it is, because there's still something remaining over. Now, same thing, Rabbi Nachman, he says, idle like limo. If let's say she brings in a talis, a cloak, a jacket, something in nixi milog. So even though it wasn't evaluated in Ksuba as nixi tzarm barzel, which means to say that the principle has to remain for her, but still, pay to have. Using it, wearing it, is considered utility, it's considered payri. And mechasabav azla dekal, you could wear it until it's becomes like a shmata, and the worn out garments are hers for the principle. Says the Gemara, wait a second, come on. Who's Rav Nachman saying, like when he says that this little bit remaining is considered principle? He says Kihai Tana. It's like the following Tana, the Rabban who disagree under Meir. The Tana learned the Braisa regarding Hamelach, salt. Let's say she inherited, at the edge of the sea, they would make these ditches, which the seawater goes in over there, and it's a little bit of water that goes in there. The sun dries up the water, and you remain with the salt, the sea salt. Or v'achol. Let's say she inherited a place where they take sand for building, for construction. So how is the pace? Says the first opinion, says that everyone agrees to this, that this is considered the payers, meaning we don't say that you should sell that place and you buy property that you could plant. No, because here the payee never gets depleted. So everyone agrees. Even Remy would agree over here that sand is, you have as much sand as you need. Salt is never going to, the ocean's never going to dry up. You're always going to have salt. Now, however, the following case is machlekes. Pidishal gafis, regarding a pit that they dig from their sulfur, and also machpedishal tzrif, this ditch of alum, which they would dye garments and silk, and they would dig in the ground. Now, those chemicals, those minerals, end up depleting, and you're going to hit bedrock, and you're not going to have anything left. That's where machlekes. Meir says, Karen, he says the whole thing is considered principle. You have to sell it, and you have to buy with its money's property, because the payee is going to get depleted. It's going to be depleted totally, and that land that's left over is not considered valid. They say payers. They say no. They say that the place of the pit is the principle, and the husband could go ahead and consume until he totally depleted, because that's considered the alum, whatever mineral it is. That's the normal way of having enough. Oh, so that says the Gemara. That's the same thing for the klima, for the cloak, for the garment. That's not comparable to monies or perisat solution, because that you could eat without leaving anything over. Meaning we said that there nothing's going to be left over. When we said the halacha of the Mishnah was if she inherits money, perisat solution. We said there you have to buy karka, because that's considered principle. Rashi explains because there the money. It doesn't. You're going to be left without anything. You're going to deplete everything. You're going to be left without anything because it doesn't make pre itself. So it's the principle. But over here, by the case of the pits with alum or whatever the alloy is, that's something you'll have. You'll have a piece of property. You'll have something. So that's machlekes regarding that little remnant that's left over. Is that considered that we're considering the principle as remaining? That's a machlekes remain the chachamim, and that's what's saying that this halacha that Rav Nachman's saying of the glima, that little remnants left over of that worn out shmata is considered keren. This kayim is only like the chacham would disagree with Meir, according to Meir, that would not be considered keren kayim. You would have to sell it before, and you wouldn't be able to wear the garment until it's like a shmata. And the Mishnah we said, Rabbi Shloimy says, he said that where you have stronger when it comes in, it's weaker when it's leaving. Which again, that's the cases of if it's mechuber lekarka payers or talusha. So the Master of Shimon Tanakama. That's the same thing as the Chacham. They said the same halacha of that even though it was attached from before they got married, but that's considered payers and he could eat that, and it's not considered keren. That's the same thing what Rabbi Shimon is saying. So Rabbi says, you're right, but the second half of the halacha, the difference between him and the Rabbanon was if it's attached when she's leaving when he's divorcing her, which Rabbanon didn't talk about. So Rashi explains, they don't hold up what Rabbi Shimon says, that when she's leaving and it's attached, that's going to be hers. No, it's not true. Because they hold what grew in his property are his. Moreover, says Rashi, you can't say that the machlekes between them is a case of when it's detached when she's leaving, because no one would disagree and say that it's hers, because since it was already detached before he divorced her, everyone would agree that he already had the rights in it, and therefore, the one case that would be different is if she's being divorced when it's attached. That Reb Shimon says it's going to be hers, just like it's weaker when it's coming in, that meaning it's stronger when it's coming in, he gets it when it's attached, she gets it when she's leaving. And that the Rabban would disagree. They says no, if it grew in his property, unlike her, that he gets, she would not get that grew in his property. That would be considered payers that already gets. That would be the case between them. Now look at the next Mishnah. Continuing the same theme regarding things that she inherits as Nixi what the halach is going to be. It says the Mishnah, Nafal Abad Mishpach is a king. Let's say she inherited elderly slaves and maidservants. So halach is Yimachru v'yilakach mein karka. So you sell them, you purchase property with it, boichel pairs and he eats the pairs. Shmuel says no, loy timker, meaning she could hold back. She doesn't want these slaves to be sold. This butler has been with the family for who knows how many years. It's part of the praise of the family that they have these servants, and therefore she could refuse the sale. Next case says the Mishnah, if nafala zeisim u'gefatim zikin, let's say she inherits old grapevines and olive trees. So the Tanakam again says, Yemachru, you sell them, you lock them in karka, and you buy property, buy the pears, and eats the pears. Pidam, he says, no, loitimku, you don't sell them, because this has already been in the family as a prize, where they always use these olives and these grapes, so therefore you don't sell them. Now, the Gemara qualifies, Amar Kalam Rav, it says, this machlekes of Zeisim and Gefanim is shenafla b'sada shalah. Only if something that she inherited the property with the trees. Now, when the olive tree is going to dry up, at least the property is going to be principal. But if, let's say, it's not her field, meaning her father had an olive tree that he purchased without the ground, on the condition that it's going to remain in the property of the seller. But the buyer will eat the pears until the tree dries up. Okay? Timker, everyone agrees that you would sell and you would buy property, and no one could stop the sale because there's no shvach beisavi over here, because anyways the principal is going to be depleted. So there's nothing for you to hold on to a family heirloom. It's not going on to the next generation. The halacha that we had, the machlekes, was only regarding if she has the property with it too. The Master asked, but how do you avoid mishvachas? Take the other case of the Mishnah. Maids and servants, I mean, that's like a case of when it's not her field, because when they're going to die, the principal is going to be totally depleted, and you have to disagree as long as they're still alive, according to the Shimon ben Gamliel, that for her and her family it's going to be a glory and a splendor that they have this case. So the Gemara amends and says, Elarada Yitma, if we said this, Hachitma, we said actually it was a different version. Amr Rav Kana Rav says, Machlekes b'sada she'ena shalom. To the contrary, the whole Machlekes in the Mishnah was only when it's not her field. And you only have the olive tree and the grapevine. So that's exactly the case of slaves, which is not going to remain. And still we have the Machlekes. But actually when it is her field, actually everyone agrees you don't sell it. That makes sense, because that's going to be a family heirloom, because that's going to remain forever and ever, because you have the property that you could continue having olive trees and grapevines on it. Everyone's going to agree that of Shvat Bezaviyah, then you're not going to be able to sell it.